think everyone's different. You've got to find what it is that gives you that inner strength mentally, because the physical part, there's pain, there's things we can deal with it in different ways, and everybody has a different threshold for pain. But all of that fades away in the face of mental strength. It's all about your attitude, and you choose. And as we all know, happiness is a state of mind. It's a choice you make.
Yes.
And so, that's something I would say is important for people to, have that, find what gives them the strength, be optimistic. You've got to fight this.
Yeah.
So for that you need that strength to fight it.
Hi Anu.
Hi Sanjana.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Looking so pretty.
Thank
This
you
sari.
so much. Thank
It's
you.
a very unique design, right?
It is. It's an abstract print, and I love polka dots.
Oh yeah, me too.
Very retro, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
We all grew up with that a lot.
Yes,
So
yeah.
it's a I thought this would be something different and nice to wear.
I know. I also have a lot of polka dots in my different shirts, small ones, big ones. So
I think we're just attracted to it, having grown up with it so much in the 70s.
Yes.
Very retro-ish. So
yes, it is. So last time we met, I was listening, and we kind of briefly talked about some walk that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate? What was it? Where was it?
Absolutely, yeah. So this was last year in September, October, with a couple of friends here in our community. I did what's known as the Camino coastal walk.
Okay.
So this is it's typically traditionally a pilgrimage walk that people do from parts of Spain, France, or Portugal to Santiago, where the Church of St. James, the patron saint of Spain, is.
Okay.
And they've built up this whole infrastructure with signs and everything for you to walk. So it's like in India, people go to Haridwar, Banaras. So the Catholics do that.
Okay.
So the three of us did it from Porto, Portugal, to Santiago.
Okay.
Wanted to go along the coast. It's not too much of a hilly, little bit of elevation, not bad. So it was about 12, 13 days.
Okay.
We walked about 170 odd miles, anywhere from 11 to 15 miles a day.
Okay. And is it done together, 15 miles, or you break in between?
I mean, you break for, you might get a cup of coffee if you see a coffee place or something.
Okay.
Or you stop for have a bar or fruit and just take a small break.
Okay.
You can stop for lunch and stuff, then you get really slowed down, so you just keep walking till you get to the next town that's on your list.
Okay.
And the paths are all laid out. So, in Portugal, we walked along the coast, the boardwalk, the ocean. It was beautiful. Then you come a little bit inside sometimes and you walk through neighborhoods. And then in Galicia in Spain, it was all in the mountains. So wooded areas, beautiful, right? The scenery, amazing. And then it's also fun to walk through some of these neighborhoods and you're looking at the houses and wondering who lives there, what do they do, where, and then we had farms. A lot of people in these small towns have their own little plot of land. They farm and grow their vegetables. And then they also have a little vineyard. Many of them. So you see grapes. So we would pluck grapes and eat because they were still on the vine, or pluck some apples and eat along the way. Okay. So it was really an amazing experience. And, people talk a lot about the physical part of it, but what is actually addictive is the mental part of it, because you walk for about 5-6 hours a day. It's in places it's so quiet, all you hear is the sound of your footsteps. And so it's very meditative.
Okay.
You know, think about meditating for 6 hours, nothing else. You're just mindfully focused on that. In this case, you have scenery around you. You're outdoors, and Europe is beautiful. And you get to physically walk and exercise, right? So at the end of it, you've burned 2,000, 3,000 calories. I mean, it's not for weight loss or anything, but you just feel so like you've accomplished so much, right? So it was an amazing experience. And, you know, for me, there was more behind the walk, right? The walk is something I've never done anything like that before. But it was important for me to do it last year because 2 years ago, this time in 21, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, stage 2 breast cancer. And, you know, breast cancer is in the US, I think it's 1 in 8 women. So we all know a friend or an acquaintance for sure. So it's not that far from us.
Yes. Yeah.
Mine was stage 2, and so I started with chemo, and then because I'm what's called HER2 positive, Herceptin receptor positive, the risk recurrence is higher for cancer. So you take additional medication. And funny enough, ironically, I used to work for Roche for 25 years. And then I quit Roche in 2020, except all the medications, the therapies I was taking for HER2 are all Roche Genentech medicines. So I know them all, being a scientist. But that I was, so I went through the whole chemo.
So you kind of knew the medications that you were taking?
I mean, I knew about them. I knew what they're used for. I'm a biochemist by education. Right now I work in genetic testing, molecular biology area. So I'm very well versed with the concept and the disease and what goes on, right? Because I'm in diagnostics. My career has been about building diagnostic tests to detect disease that people can then use for therapies. So I understand the landscape well. So when I was diagnosed, you know, it came to me very naturally to ask all the right questions, understand the therapies. Why are you picking this drug? Okay, I'm HER2 positive. I know what that means. And then the treatment protocol moving beyond that, right, to surgery and radiation. But one of the things that I realized during the process was how much I take for granted my understanding of medical, you know, information and content, and just the amount of information that comes a patient's way. I mean, cancer, managing cancer is a project, and I work in project management, so I took it as a project, right? Because it's not something like you have a heart attack or something, you go to the hospital, you have a bypass surgery, and you come home, and then it's all on you to just rehabilitate and recover. You're just going in and out for chemo and things like that. You come home, you have to take care of all the other things. And you have to manage all this. There is no, I go to the hospital for 10 days and they take care of me there. It's a daily thing for months on end. And so it's a long journey. And so people have to manage it themselves. It's a lot of coordination. Oh, you need to go for this appointment. You need to do this. Can you please go get this test done? So it's not like in the hospital, a nurse comes, does it. You're just lying there, right? It's not like that.
So you have to manage everything else and
project manage this. And you know, you have to go to different places. And I think, you know, I appreciated much more how much information comes a patient's way and why people get so overwhelmed, where they feel like, oh, I need to get a second opinion. Because I had a lot of people asking me, are you going to go get a second opinion? And I said, why? I decoded the path report even before I saw my oncologist. I already knew I had stage 2 before I went to see my oncologist, because that's what my background allows me to do. But I could see how for some people they might be like, okay, I want to talk to one other doctor and understand or confirm that this is what you're saying. Having said that, it's not that you just blindly follow what's said. I think one of the biggest things is you have to advocate for yourself. You have to ask questions.
Okay.
You have to talk to people if you're not sure, and get different perspectives. And then you have to make choices and decisions based on that. If you get overwhelmed, then take it a little bit at a time, break it down and say, let me first understand this part. Let me understand this part. And, if you have to take a day or two or a week to do it, it's okay. You're already here.
Yeah.
It's not like, unless you are in a very severe stage, it's not like anything's going to happen if you take a few days. So don't feel like you have to rush to something, right? But I think it's so that one first thing is owning it. And spending more time figuring out, okay, now it's here, what am I going to do? Instead of, oh, why me? Why is this happening to me? You can look into that from a scientific genetic testing perspective, but not emotionally. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
It's here. So now focus on the practical part.
It's like any other issue when we have, like even a blood pressure, you have to manage, right? If someone having a blood pressure up in high BP, for example.
I mean, there you may have some things you have to change, like your diet, right?
Yeah.
But that you can moderate it. Maybe there's a family history.
Yeah.
So that's where you can do some of that. But you have to get over that shock soon and start dealing with the reality that it's here now, and let me just face it. So talk to people, challenge your doctors, and get as much information as you need. Now there's a fine line between getting the information you need and getting too much information to where then you're paralyzed. And if you go, we have Google Doctor. You Google a ton of stuff, you get everything, and then you're lost. You're not sure which way to go. So you have to find that balance. In my case, I think I knew the information, so it helped. I read whatever little bit I needed to. I think it was more about talking to people to understand the journey of how is this going to shape out? What are some of the things I need to watch for? Not so much from a medical perspective, right? It's more from a practical perspective. I think the other thing for me was, I'm a very glasses half full person. So I just kept my sense of optimism, right? Okay, we're going to have to deal with this, beat it. Yeah, there were really tough days. Chemo is not something I would wish on my worst enemy. And I think for a lot of us, especially being Indian, food is such a big part of our lives, and we're used to eating good Indian food, which has a lot of different spices.
Yeah.
When you're going through chemo, you can't taste anything.
Okay.
And Indian food has a lot of different flavors and spices, and it tastes like what I thought was mud. You just want to be left alone. You're like, I don't want to eat, but you have to eat. You have to drink. Even water tastes horrible, right? So there are really bad days, but you take them for what they are, and then you enjoy the good days where you're feeling good, where your taste is starting to come back. Appreciate your body for the fact that it's able to recover from all these things.
Yes.
And, keep living life. And so for me, that was very important, to stay optimistic, stay positive.
What helped you, Anu? Like, it's like, what if someone is not the optimistic kind? Because there are people who, for some reason, something is out of control.
We're all
right?
different,
We're
right?
all different.
How we react.
How do you make yourself, and especially with something like this, like even if you were somebody is a little optimistic, they might just say, "Oh my God!" Like, what do you do to come out of it? Like in your
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to figure out something that's going to keep you engaged and motivated. And for people, it's different things, right? So I remember when I was diagnosed and I started chemo, I watched a couple of videos. One of them was of this young lady who loved dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time she would finish a chemo session, she would come out into the parking lot of the place she had gone to, the center, and she would do a little dance and record a video to show that, hey, I'm still here. I'm still me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And another person would go hiking every time after a chemo. That was their thing, right? And maybe they sometimes, as you went through the chemo, you couldn't do 3 hours of hiking. Maybe you could only do half an hour.
Yeah.
But you do what you can, right? In my case, I wear saris all the time. I love saris. I collect them. I wear them for my work calls
I've always
every
seen
day.
you in beautiful sarees.
Thank you. I wear them every day pretty much. So I kept that going. I would still take pictures, post it on my Insta or Facebook or whatever group I was in.
Yeah.
I was still working, so I would still dress up and be ready for work on the days that I could. The days I couldn't, you couldn't. But whenever you could, you still did it. So probably there's many of my acquaintances and people who see my posts who do not know that I was actually sick.
Yeah.
And it for me, that sense of normalcy was important. And that kept me going.
Yeah.
For like I said, the girl with the dance, or maybe it's having your support group and you get together after the chemo and you hang out with your girlfriends or something. Whatever makes you feel good and that gives you that sense of normalcy. Yeah, you have to figure it out, right? It's different. For me, this kept me going. I also have another reason why I had to maintain a sense of normalcy, which is I have a younger son who is autistic. He's 20. But 2 years ago, we were still getting through the pandemic. Schools were still not fully back.
Yes.
And it had been a rough year of the pandemic with no schools and Zoom calls, right? So he was still getting over that. And then this happened. So, and he doesn't know what cancer is, but he knows enough to know that both my parents passed away from it. So somewhere there, he's worried my mom is going to die, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't know how to communicate it. Yeah. And for him, it was important that everything is normal. So whenever he would see me dressed up, I'm taking calls, I'm working, we would go out for dinner when we could. I can't taste anything, but it's okay.
Yeah.
We maintained that as a family, right? Yeah. So I think having that family support and, finding whether it's work or keeping your hobby or something going to whatever extent you can.
Because the kids see when parents are
right,
behaving normal, they also absorb it, they sense it, right?
Right. And we all know how it is, right? When one person in the house is not well, everybody in the house is kind of on an edge. Life is not normal, right? So with things like this, it's going to go on for 15, 18 months. So, you don't want to be living like that for that time. So I think for people, it's important to build a community, find out what gives them strength. Yeah. Whether it's physical activity, whether it's something mental, even Zoom calls with friends. Every Saturday, I'm going to have a Zoom call with my girlfriends or what friends or whatever, right? Or kids. It's finding whatever will keep you motivated, will keep you positive, keeps you focused on the good parts of life, and that life goes on while you take care of healing yourself. So I think coming back to the walk, that was something I wanted to do after having been through 15, 18 months of this, to prove to myself, yes, my body's okay, I can do this.
You can do this.
There are still things to do, and I want to check them off on my bucket list. But yeah, I think everyone's different. You've got to find what it is that gives you that inner strength mentally, because the physical part, there's pain, there's things we can deal with it in different ways, and everybody has a different threshold for pain. But all of that fades away in the face of mental strength. It's all about your attitude, and you choose. And as we all know, happiness is a state of mind. It's a choice you make.
Yes.
And so, that's something I would say is important for people to, have that, find what gives them the strength, be optimistic. You've got to fight this.
Yeah.
So for that, you need that strength to fight it.
And, that mental state helps you fight, right?
Yeah, you need that to fight back, right? You can't just give in. Doesn't mean you can't have bad days. I mean, there were days where I've cried over a plate of food because I didn't want to eat, and I'm just like, when is this going to get over? But then you also have the days where you just go to the restaurant and you eat. You can't taste, but
just enjoy the moment.
They say the show must go on, right? But if you think about why must it go on, it's more to give you that sense as well.
Yes.
That you can continue to live and you continue to take care of this, and that way your family, your friends, everybody around you, is able to help you live life.
And I feel as a parent, it's as a mother, it just becomes more important to make sure everything.
Your whole family, right? Everybody picks up the vibes from the mother, right?
It's like you got to, make sure there's some excitement always, in the family.
You've got to find your own fun, right? And so it's different for different people. Yeah. And, the thing I've learned from this whole, it's even more important is what I've learned to live in the moment. And that life is really short, and many of us, like me, are now living on borrowed time. So do whatever you need to do. So if it's like, let's do something different, like this walk, do it.
Yeah, do it. Yeah,
don't. I have a supportive family. I was able to take time off from work and take 2.5 weeks and go do this. I think have something to look forward to. Right?
Yeah, no, that is very important. I totally agree with you. Mind controls everything. Each and every cell in our body responds to our mind, So to keep your mind positive, you got to do things you like to do, right? Or you love to do.
Right, and find something, it's different, right? So there's no book that says here are the things to do, right?
Yeah.
It's whatever you can physically do and whatever you have that liking for.
Yeah. It could just be wearing some nice dress or a nice sari you would like to wear, or like to dress up and be happy. Right?
I mean, different people do different things, right? I've talked to people over the years, last couple of years. One person told me about their experience of how, every time they finished a chemo session, the family would buy one of those little charms for a bracelet. Each of the family members took turns picking a charm. So at the end, you have a bracelet with all these charms that reminds you of those times of how people love you and they're rooting for you.
Yeah.
And they want to see you get better.
Yeah.
And for them, that was the fun. Everybody was like, oh, this week, this time it's mine. I'm going to pick it. So they go to Pandora and they pick a charm. So there's so many different ways you can celebrate the good parts of life. So I think, whether it's cancer or whatever the issue is, right?
And the issue, I feel, is different for different people. It could just be something else, it could just be, there's so many things. There's health issue. There could be other issues too, right? But I'm saying, like, this is life. Life will have something or the other, right?
Yeah,
just to
I mean,
stay
there's
positive.
Always stuff, right?
Yeah, there's always stuff. Yeah,
that's the way of life. I mean, I think when you have physical issues, it's definitely much more something you can work with your mind as opposed to a mental issue, which is much harder.
Yeah.
So, that's where I always look at, it could be worse.
It could be worse,
But mental strength, I think, is is very important when you're facing adversity, and it's harder as we grow older.
Yeah.
But it's not something you can just find in one place, right? You have to figure out what it is that gives you that strength.
To dig into it and find, right?
Yeah, find
What is
something
it?
that's going to, bring a smile to your face, make you forget what's going on, and focus on something else. That's the key. Because this is going to be there, you keep dealing with it, but find something else that gives you that focus, or just gives you that energy, and takes your mind off of whatever you're dealing with. Do your research, do your homework, do all of that, but don't spend all your time brooding about it, right? Because what is it going to get you? Nothing.
It's going to just make it worse, right?
Right.
Thinking too much about it.
If you think about it, there are times where we aren't well, and yet we say, I have to go to work today. I have to take care of this. And then there are times where you just get up and you say, I'm not feeling well. I'm not going. And the moment you've said, I'm not going, your mind has made that decision. Now, no matter what happens, it's hard to overcome that. So it's all in the mind.
And I completely believe that. It's
all the willpower. And a lot of people say, you're very strong. I'm not that strong. All of us are strong. But you have to find it. Nobody else can find it for you. Because whatever makes you tick and whatever makes you get excited is different.
It's different.
Yeah.
Nobody can really guide you. Or nobody can really tell you.
Or what worked for you may not work for me. Right.
So it is completely it's a very individual thing.
It is. But everybody has it. It's about how much you dig in and pull it out when push comes to shove.
So what I learned from you, Anu, today was you planned on this trip, and which you talked about, and I definitely would want to go.
And you can do small portions. You don't have to do the whole walk. People do 3 days, 4 days. It's addictive.
And it was on your bucket list. So and you talked about how you managed your disease. And the main thing that I learned from you today was that you said that mind is what controls everything, right? If you are dealing with something, you have to control it with your mind, which is by staying positive, by not worrying too much about it, but taking the right steps.
Right.
It's not
educate yourself, arm yourself, but don't give in to it.
Don't deny it, accept it,
right,
and then understand it, and then deal with it, but then move on. Right?
And in parallel, keep living. If you're able to. Right now, if you have to be in a hospital and things are happening, that's different. But if not, keep living. And, find what excites you, find what energizes you, and gives you that strength and motivation, right?
All right. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you for asking about my story.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
If you want to talk about anything at all, then you know who to call. Just tell Sanjana. Tell Sanjana. Tell Sanjana. Tell Sanjana. Just tell Sanjana.